Hey, before you hang up, say this.
Sure.
This is Steve Pavlina, and you're listening to Vroom, Vroom, Veer.
Do you want me to say it like that?
You say it how Steve says it.
Okay. This is Steve Pavlina, and you are listening to Vroom, Vroom, Veer.
Perfect.
Good. There
Thanks,
you go.
brother. Later.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Dr. Joanie Connell, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer. How's it going?
It's going well, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great. And thank you again for hanging out with me and having a little chat. Okay, so your website is called flexibleworksolutions.com. You know that. I'm telling everybody out there listening. And, you know, you're helping folks, organizations, parents, and I guess people just looking to change their jobs and doing some real interesting work now. But back in the day, you were, you know, obviously like everybody else, most folks, you went to college, you went to high school, and you have a real interesting story because you went to Harvard. And that sounds like, you know, really cool. What was that like?
I don't know if it was cool. I remember it now.
Maybe it wasn't.
It wasn't cool.
Everybody thinks it was cool.
I remember walking through Harvard Yard on a Friday night. You could hear a pin drop. It wasn't like we were partying and such. But it was a good education. It was a great education. And I studied engineering there, which is something which ends up coming up in my life story here. But my parents told me in no uncertain terms that 4 years at Harvard, that was as much money as they were going to spend on me.
You know, you can't ask much more, right?
Right. And so I had to have a degree that I could do something with upon graduation. And
yeah. Engineering is one of those, right? Okay.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Let's back up a little bit because Harvard, the hard part is getting in, right? So you must have been one of those. That's just crazy. Is there a story behind how somebody decides that that's what you want to do as a high school student?
Well, actually, this is kind of the opposite of what's going on today with parents getting so involved. I just wanted to go. I grew up in Cambridge. I grew up a mile away from Harvard.
Wow.
I used to walk through Harvard Yard every day on the way to high school. And I loved it. It was beautiful. The buildings, the libraries were just amazing. And I thought, this is a place where I'd really like to go. And I came home from school one day and I told my parents I was going to apply to Harvard. And they both were like, really?
Okay.
First thing there was like, wow, how much is it going to cost? And said, no worries. They have financial aid. And my parents were a little skeptical, but they said, well, you know, if you think you can get in. So it was really all on me. And I was just a very driven kid, you know, and I just loved to learn. And I was very active and had, I think, an interesting childhood, traveled a lot with my dad who brought us to Africa, Central America, all sorts of places. So perhaps
you had a Harvard level resume as a high school kid.
I probably did by today's terms, but by those days, it was just like, I was who I was, you know, and
yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I did it, gave it my best shot and got in, I think by the skin of my teeth.
Hey, you know what? That's awesome. You know,
yeah,
it's pretty amazing, you know, whenever you do it. Now that you're talking about Harvard Yard, the only thing I can think of is Click and Clack the Tappet Brothers.
Yeah.
and Car Talk Plaza. So did you ever run into those guys?
No, but I've listened to them. I've never
show. My job is just to laugh like the brother that passed away about a year ago on my show. That's the role that I like to play. I'm not the smart one. I just show up and try to be humorous occasionally and let the guest be the smart one.
Oh, at least it's a good time.
There you go. That's key is you have to be entertaining first. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. So you spend 4 years in Harvard and you end up with a degree in what sort of engineering?
Well, there is called engineering sciences. And so I did electrical engineering was really what it was. I specialized in electrical engineering. And having gone to school a mile from home and lived in the snow and cold for all my life, I pretty much got as far away as possible and moved to Silicon Valley.
Wow. That's a big veer, Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I'd never been to California before. The first time I was there was during a job interview. And I flew in, and the flight was delayed. It was about 1 a.m. I just remember arriving, and it was balmy, and there were flowers everywhere. And I just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it kind of reminds me of the first time when I was in the Air Force, and I was stationed in Hawaii for a while. And that was, have you ever been to Hawaii?
Yes, I have.
You know what so are you familiar with, they do this on purpose, right? As soon as you land and get off the plane, you can smell flowers forever.
That, to me, is one of the most amazing things. I flew there the first time going to Australia, and I never forget my layover as being one of the most pleasant experiences ever.
Right. I know. It's just like if you were at all stressed from that plane ride. I mean, they put flowers around your neck. So, I mean, that's the end all be all of, well, they're going to smell flowers. Damn it. But it's actually in the air as well, So, yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, so you get a job in Silicon Valley. Talk a little bit about that. What sort of job did you get?
It was a fabulous job. This was back in 87.
Aha, okay.
Yeah, and it was right when Silicon Valley was really starting to blossom.
Right.
And I worked for...
That was like, a little bit. Like, there were no cell phones. There were barely computers. That was back in the IBM ATXT. We hadn't even gotten to Windows 95 yet.
Right.
Wow.
Yes. So the next piece of the story is I worked for Tandem Computers, which built mainframes.
Right. Tandem, not Tandy. Tandem.
Right. Tandem.
Okay.
Parallel processors that ran, for example, the New York Stock Exchange, so that if anything happened to the computer, there was always another one running the same exact thing at the same time, so that it wouldn't ever go down.
That's like a dual core processor in my cell phone.
Yeah, exactly. Back then, it took up several rooms, though, right?
Right. Okay, sorry, I keep interrupting. Keep talking about your job.
Well, it was a great job. Tandem Computers, although it's not that well known, it was kind of like an HP. And, it was kind of like a Google is today. We had swimming pools. We had great cafeterias. Ooh. I mean, it was just this wonderful place. And I had this really nice job back when there were offices. And I had an office mate. We had 2 people per office. And it was a really good place to be. I made decent money. I had an apartment and was living a good life.
What was the job like? Now, let me just rewind because I graduated high school in 87. Mm-hmm. And we had in my high school in Michigan an IBM System 36, which was considered a mini computer, which I can't even describe what the size of it was, but it was, I'm trying to think of maybe like 2 or 3 air conditioning units all in under one plastic thing. Right? That was considered mini. Right. Anyway, so what was your job like working on mainframes? What was the job like? I mean, were you punch cards or floppy disks?
Not
or disk
that
packs?
old.
The disk packs, right? Is that what those were? Those
I was
Tapes.
working on large boards, circuit boards.
Oh, okay.
And there were slots in the big mainframes, and you would put it in the slot.
Right.
And I did data communications, which was making connections between the mainframe and modems that
Right.
go outside,
Right.
and so that was really what I was working on, and helping improve the communications there and getting circuit boards created to do that. So it was a hardware
Wow.
engineering job.
Neat.
I would work a lot in the lab and with soldering irons and testing things with all sorts of equipment, and seeing if where the bugs were in the in the boards, and
Yeah.
testing them with different equipment, and also on the computer a lot in the office, doing a lot of design and that kind of work. So it was pretty isolating work. It was pretty
Yeah. Right.
with the computers, and it wasn't a lot of teamwork. I didn't end up just by chance doing a lot of teamwork. I ended up getting projects which were kind of small, so I would just do them on my own.
Right.
And so it was a great job, but I wasn't really that happy.
It wasn't a great fit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It was kind of no, I know exactly what you mean, because I do IT, like low-level help desky customer support stuff right now. But usually, I have done a lot of tech jobs, but I really like working with people more than I do machines.
Yes. That's exactly where I was at.
Yeah. So I can sympathize and empathize.
Yeah.
Right.
I can tell you, I just remember we used to have at the time monthly staff meetings. I mean, not even weekly, but just once
Jeez,
per
once a month.
right?
You'd get in. Okay.
Yeah, we'd get the whole department in. I think there were about 12 of us in a room, and the manager would essentially go around the room, and we'd all have to report in what we're doing. And as soon as we were done, the doors would burst open, and it was like, well, school's out. Everyone's running out of the room. Nobody wanted to be there. It was so uncomfortable. And I was very curious about that, going, wow, this is so interesting how these folks that I'm working with are so energized by working with the computers and debugging and staying late to do all this work, yet they're so not interested in the interactions, and they're not necessarily skilled at it either, where I was the opposite.
Right.
And so, I was much more interested in the people, and, I was ready to leave at 5 because I had other things I wanted to do.
Right,
I didn't want to stay all evening and continue working.
Right.
And so,
with all your friends, the machines.
yeah, exactly.
I still have days like that at work.
Right.
Yeah. And now I've learned, and I know this isn't like a hardened stone, but these are just sort of like general things that people use to type personalities. But like the extrovert type to me is somebody that gets energized by interacting with people. Mm-hmm. And then introverted folks are, again, in general terms, more like they're more energized by doing things by themselves.
Right.
And then obviously we both can do both, but the introvert would be spending a lot more energy and feeling depleted with the interaction. It feels like more work to them.
Yep.
Is that similar to your experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So you learned a lot in that job about you.
I did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And
okay.
I learned a lot about myself. I also learned a lot about engineers as being really trained in the technical side, but not in the people side.
Totally. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, that was kind of an early on, we're talking about little signs that kind of were there, but not quite, visible yet to me about what I want to do in the future.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely feeling like it's leaning towards you want to work with people more than machines. That's what it's leaning towards. Okay. Right. Okay. So you spend how long there then?
I was there for 3 years.
Okay.
Then I moved into another job in marketing because I thought I want to work more with people. Mm-hmm. And it was an applications engineering job, which is a job I could get because what applications engineers do is help salespeople and some of the customer service, in the marketing department. But it's really still very technical work. as it turned out.
Right.
It's turned out to be very technical, and I still had to be an engineer, even though I was interacting with people. It was very centered on engineering and knowing all the details of how all these things worked, even if I wasn't designing them.
Right. Now, in that job, were you a little bit more like an interface kind of? So you were sort of like you had the engineering background, and then the sales and marketing folks were like saying, "Can we say this?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So we didn't have as much interaction with the customers. Sometimes we go along with folks who were doing the sales, but generally we're in the headquarters trying to interface between the two.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it at least you're not alone.
Right. Yes.
So it's a step up.
Yeah.
Okay. So at what point did you decide to go get a doctorate at UC Berkeley?
Okay.
Is that way in the future? Or do we?
Not too far in the future.
Okay.
I changed jobs one more time to try to get even more people oriented, but essentially doing the same kind of work.
Right.
And it was at that point, I kept finding that I still had to be an engineer. With my background, people wanted me to be an engineer, and it was hard to get out of that. So I thought what I really need to do is go back to school and get some different expertise so I can make a bigger jump.
Right.
And so that's when I decided to go back to graduate school. And, I was thinking about business and psychology, and I thought, I'm really interested in people and the way they interact. And back to the engineering days, looking at how people interact and how to improve communication, especially among technical people. And another piece that was interesting to me was how we interact differently face-to-face, on computers and on the phone, and all these different ways of interacting, because that was kind of an emerging phenomenon at the time.
Right. Yes. So people with being anonymous on social media and the internet, they feel a little bit more, I don't know, bold, stupid.
Yeah, bold, to be a little more comfortable and reveal more, but also to not
be more
feel bad about
too.
yelling at someone. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Very sincere. So, so I was interested in combining those two a little bit and looking at the technology interface and the psychology. So that's what I ended up doing my dissertation on, as a matter of fact.
Wow. Interesting. So what sort of degree did you get? That was psychology or occupational? Oh,
it's psychology.
Psychology.
It's a PhD in psychology, and I was in the social psychology area, specializing in organizational psychology.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Because I think I've had another person who was in the, what did he call it? Like the organizational development field.
Oh, yeah.
That's something similar to what you're working in now. Okay.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Amazing. Okay, so you go out, you get your doctorate from yet another prestigious school. Good for you. What was the first job thing after that?
Well, you want to hear something funny?
I do.
I went back to an engineering company.
That's okay. That's actually recommended.
Yeah,
it is. It was even in what color is your parachute? Oh, that's not your book. Sorry, you're flying without a helicopter. But
right, but
in what color? Yeah,
great book.
It is a great book, and I think I read it more than once. But they suggested that when you're doing a job change or a Veer, like I like to say, it's smarter to change one thing. Let's say there's two circles. One's your industry and one's your job. It's easier to change one of those two without changing the other one, because you already know people in the engineering world, right? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense as that, obviously, eventually down the road, you probably don't want to be involved in engineering anymore. I get that. Yeah. Because it's funny, but it makes sense as a stepping stone, to get your feet wet in an industry that you already are familiar with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, it worked out quite well in that regard. And it's kind of funny because a lot of people move from Tandem Computers, which was my first job, to Cisco Systems when Tandem got bought out by Compaq.
Ah,
So,
Cisco. That makes so much
yes.
sense.
So I was there and I knew
Ah,
people from my engineering days. I had
yeah.
some folks that I had worked with, but not I didn't work with them anymore. They were still in the same company, but it was kind of a funny sort of turn.
Well, Cisco became now they're all about routers and switches and
Yep.
right and long haul and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you were sort of like back in the Tandem days, you were sort of like laying the groundwork, right, for all of what would become a router and a network interface card. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, this is like a skipping down computer memory lane here. Networking. This is fun. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that job at Cisco. What was that like? Was it different enough to be more fun?
Yeah, it was very different. So I was doing work in human-centered computing.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, and that was really about the customer experience and how to make the hardware and software much more usable. We called it usability engineering, right? And I was going around visiting customers and doing research to find out how they were using different products and then trying to set up new ways to make the products better suit their needs. And I ended up getting on a product, I guess you would say, that was used largely in Europe. And it was used around the U.S. too, but I was traveling 80% of the time.
Right.
Long story short.
Sure.
And it was so much fun for me because I love to travel. That's always been my passion. But it wasn't a sustainable way of living.
It's just exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember flying in December 23rd and back out the 26th and maybe back for New Year's. I don't remember. And so it was a lot of fun. I was doing a lot of really fun stuff. But, and then something else came along, and that is my husband and I wanted to have a baby.
Mm-hmm. You need to do
and
that.
I thought,
yeah.
Yes. And we want to have a baby. And, the clock is ticking. And we said, I can't really.
You can't do this
be
and
traveling
do that.
80% of the time. And we had also at that point moved up to San Francisco. And I was commuting, and my husband was commuting. And it was right in the heat of the .com era.
The boom.
The boom. And then the bust, right?
Yeah,
shortly after.
there was nothing, and then bust. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That was like the 90s, right?
Yeah, this was the end of the 90s.
End of the 90s.
2000. Okay. Yeah, right in 2000, around that time. Yeah. So I was at Cisco, and we were commuting, and I was traveling, and it was crazy. And we wanted to have a baby, and we wanted to buy a place. We were just living in a flat in San Francisco, which was lovely. It was amazing, great experience. But we found that it was really expensive, and we started looking around at other places and saying, it's a little bit crazy here. It's very congested. It's expensive. You can't get out. The traffic to go away for the weekend. You're stuck. You can't get into a restaurant because it's full. All these things. And so, looked for other places to live and ended up landing in San Diego.
Oh, San Diego's great. I love San Diego.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. That's where we're at now. And my husband's a lawyer, so he wanted to stay in California because he was licensed to practice in the state of California.
Makes sense.
And so, and he had his firm had an office down here. So I said, okay, no problem. So I moved down to San Diego, and I decided to take on a very different job, one where I thought I could have a lot more flexibility and work not quite full time. And I went back to my psychology training at Berkeley and became a professor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's like a 180.
Yeah. I have to be honest with you. I never really wanted to be a professor because after being in the academic world, professors, they can be pretty hard on each other,
Right. Yes. I had another
competitive.
Yeah. It's kind of a rough herd to run in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had
I've
already
heard that
been
from other guests.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Good. Okay. So you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Well, I took a job at California School of Professional Psychology, which is now part of Alliant International University. And it's a school for people who want to be consultants, not for people who want to be academics. So it's and also they'd have a clinical arm for people who want to be
a clinical
therapists,
right,
clinical psychologists. So it's really a practical education, and it seemed like a great fit because there they wanted people who would do some consulting one day a week and do teaching in the other days. And I'd be working with graduate students who really want to get out there and work in the workplace. And so I took the job, and that again was a great fit for the time. And we ended up getting pregnant much quicker than expected, and I had a baby, and that made things challenging, but yeah, it's very challenging to be working so hard and doing all that. But I made it work out and stayed there for a while. And I found that after a while there that they wanted to shift the focus of the program to be a lot more scholarly and academic and less in the consulting realm.
Okay.
And so that's when I decided to go out and consult on my own ultimately. And I stayed on as an adjunct and teaching for a while, but eventually just started consulting. So that's where I'm at now. And that was about maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. So you've been on your own for a while. Good for you. Yay, you made it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we can dive into what sorts of stuff you talk about with the different. You have a wide range of people that you work with now, right?
Yes, and that's for better or for worse because it's less of a niche, I suppose, but it's really interesting stuff, and I just have a hard time saying no and just limiting myself.
Right.
But I started out doing a lot in the remote work and virtual teams, which I still do some of.
Okay.
The flexible work comes out of that too.
Right.
Again, merging those interests in the engineering and my background in my PhD program and looking at the different technologies and how they interact with the psychology and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I still teach classes in virtual teams and do some of that. And it comes up all the time anyways, because most people are managing some sort of virtual work or teams because they're working with people from different parts of the world. And some of these issues still come up. But other things that have interested me there are the flexibility as part also just because I wanted to have a flexible work. And it sort of stemmed from some of the telecommuting and being able to have different hours. But also just some basic of the training that I had in my PhD program, which is leadership development and assessment. So companies hire their leaders and hopefully not fire, but sometimes fire them, but mostly develop them once they're in.
You're not one of the consultants from that goes in and fires people. Right.
No,
I just wanted to, I already knew that. I just wanted to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't go
You're not one of the Bobs, right? From Office Space. I think
No. I'm trying to make them even better. And
yeah.
So I do that. A lot of the work that I do is with executives because that's where companies put their funding in this type of work. It's expensive to coach and to do this kind of assessment and training. And so I work with a lot of executives, but I was also finding that there were a lot of challenges the executives were going through with some of the younger people and the different generations.
I had another guest, Brad Zollis, and he talks a lot about how to deal with millennials.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, right?
Yeah, no, I deal with that a lot. In fact, the helicopter, Flying Without a Helicopter book is a lot. I mean, it's not necessarily.
Is the helicopter the parent? Is that where you got?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, gotcha.
Helicopter parents.
The helicopter
and the whole
parent.
idea, is looking at what happens when the kids who have been helicoptered grow up and get to work and find that they don't have some of these basic life skills that they need to have to be successful. And so that's where the book came out of, is working with people in the workplace and finding that there was this gap there and what are the frustrations, and also having a kid and seeing how parenting had really shifted from when I grew up and to the way kids are growing up today.
Yeah. And you work with parents too, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work with parents, I work with young people
Mm-hmm.
and educators, and also with the managers who are trying to figure out how to manage millennials and as well as themselves. Yeah.
So this brings up the big R word, the resilience.
Mhm.
Is that a big part of your work?
It is. In fact, a lot of it is about resilience. And I can tell you firsthand from listening to some of the story, you might have realized I've had to have a lot of resilience of my own to
Amen. You know,
so
that's
these
yeah.
changes.
Right, right. That's what this
Right.
show is all about. It's like,
Yeah.
not every change in your life has to be a crisis.
Yeah.
And that's where, you build in these resilience systems. So what sort of things do you teach on that line? What do you tell a kid who is getting ready to go or preparing to enter the workforce?
Well, I tell the same thing to pretty much everyone at
Okay.
all levels, but really it's you have to be able to learn how to make mistakes and have failures and pick yourself back up and stay positive and keep going.
Right. Yes.
Right. And so when it comes to young people getting out in the workplace, it's saying you're going to have some of these mistakes. You're going to have some failures, and you need to be strong and not let them just cripple you when you
Right.
get there. And that's one of the problems that's coming up now is some of the folks who are getting in there who haven't had these barriers to overcome earlier on in their lives, they
They haven't
give
been
up.
devastated yet.
Yeah,
Right.
they get devastated over small things.
Right.
Right? A manager gives them feedback and they burst into tears or they quit. They
Right.
run home, they have their parents call up. And I'm not joking,
No, no, I
Yeah.
know. I know. Yeah. I've seen it.
Yeah. There we are. Right.
They get crushed. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
now, do you think that's part of the whole everybody there are no losers kind of syndrome? Is
Yep.
that part of it? Okay.
Yeah. Well,
That
yeah. I think
because
that
when we were kids, it seemed like my parents anyway were a little bit more hands-offy as far as like letting me find my hierarchy within the kids, right?
Yep.
The pecking order, as they call it. And it seems like they've kind of legislated that out of the school experience a little bit.
I like that. They've
I
legislated
actually,
out.
I'm shocked because now this is probably a bad example, but I've been doing IT work in Inglewood School District,
Okay.
right? Inner city stuff. And these little kids kind of like get up in my face, like threatening, and, like say stuff, like, who are you? Why are you here? Like kindergartners. And I'm like, I'm a grown adult. I'm not going to do anything. Right. But that's bad. If they did that to a slightly older kid, they should already know that they shouldn't do that.
Right.
Right. And they don't. And that's not good. I don't know what to do about it. I just see it and I go, ooh, bad. That kid's going to have an awakening, and hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yep. Yeah, and the earlier on, the better, because they're
Right.
usually smaller learning lessons rather than the big ones. It's
Yeah.
not like you've lost your job and your house. It's more
Right.
like, yeah, maybe you got a skinned knee or a little bruise on your arm or
You
something.
had a little scuffle in the
Yeah.
schoolyard,
Yeah.
a shoving match or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Whenever people think about or talk about resilience, I think of, you remember the movie Heartbreak Ridge?
Yeah.
Do you do? And it was, who was that? Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
And he was talking to Marines, and the Marines were whining about, I don't know, whatever Marines whine about. And he's like, you have to improvise, adapt, overcome. And
That's so true.
yeah, right? Whenever I'm in that sort of like, I just got knocked down and maybe my lips bloody when I was in the Air Force, then I would hear that voice and I'd be like, grr. So,
Right.
yeah, right?
And it probably makes you stronger and come up
Right.
with better ideas, too.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's not that's not the quit moment. Now, sometimes you need to, take a step back and lick your wounds, but it's not the end of the world, I guess
Right.
is the lesson. Right.
Yeah. And, you have to assess, but when you run into your first barrier, I mean, the leaders that I work with, every single one of them without fail, every single one says that they've had these mistakes and failures and they've
Of
had
course.
to keep trying more and more times. I was at a talk, a few weeks ago by a district attorney, and she was talking about how many times it took her to get in that office. It was, I think, 3 times. And you
Right.
sit there going, wow, I mean, she ran for office 3 times. A lot of people would just do it once, lose, and give up,
Right.
right? But she's there now, and she's a fantastic woman and very successful. But it took her 3 tries to get it.
I met more than one, but one in particular, and he was a colonel in the Air Force, and that's a very high achievement rank.
Yep.
And he put all of his letters of rejection from the Air Force Academy on his wall, and they were all framed.
That is fantastic.
Especially the one that finally said, "Oh, here's the one that really counts, number 7, or whatever it was. I got in."
Wow, what a great lesson
Right?
on the wall there. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and that's it's almost like you want to wear those failures as a badge of honor,
Well, and that I think is
You
one
learn
of the
something.
Yeah, and one of the challenges we have is I hear this a lot from people, especially parents, is that we've got Facebook with everyone putting up smiling, happy
Yeah.
pictures of
So
things
true.
going
Right.
on without
Right.
showing the failures. And so we have this very distorted view now of success and happiness in this world, not seeing what people and all the tries that they had to do to get there. We're just seeing that one picture.
Yeah, and it's always the highlight reel that's always everything sunny.
Yes.
Right. And you never hear about, I really struggled with X today and I feel
Right.
like crap and I'm going to have some ice cream. But
Yeah.
but we all have those days too. But
Yeah.
we don't put them on social media apparently. Maybe we need to have another book.
Yeah.
The shame book.
That's true.
The shame book. I think that would do horrible and nobody would ever go on it.
Funny.
That's great. So let me just ask you this because, we're talking and I'm, thinking about doing a new career. Do you help folks, say like me, that are, close to middle age still, I guess?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I work
So-
with a lot of people who are older,
Right.
and not necessarily just people trying to figure out first career. Usually
Right.
you get to a point, a lot of people get to a point where they want to make a change, or they found, like I did, that it wasn't a good fit.
Right.
And so I definitely work with people who are in that age range. And first thing I do typically is help them do an assessment of figuring out what it is they want, and not just a topic, but the environment and the fit. What it is about a job. I mean, because you can be pretty much almost any expertise, right? IT, and you could work in sales, you can work in developing things, you can work in fixing things. I mean, you can do all sorts of different things with that.
Right.
But you have to find out what is the right fit.
Yeah, and I remember having this chat with my spouse because she's yelling at me for working for very little money and saying you should get a job, just like that. And I was like, yeah, I want to hire some sort of coach, and I have to apologize because the dogs next door are going crazy. Oh, and there's construction going on next door. So sorry, everybody. It's podcasting.
Welcome to my world.
It's podcasting.
Yeah.
I don't have a studio. It's just my house.
Speaking of little pay and all.
That's right. That's right. So we were, I was like, I know that I have a ton of skills from, being in the Air Force for 20 years and doing a gajillion different things and, traveling and all this other stuff and dealing with disappointment and getting beat up and failing and coming back. And, and what I said was like, I just don't know what I don't know right now. I'm sure there's like a ton of different jobs that I've never heard of that I would be perfect for.
I am so glad that you said this, because I actually do work with folks who are retiring from military. I've worked with Navy SEALs, I've worked with people in different branches, and it's so interesting because so many of them don't see the transferable skills that they have
Right.
to different types of civilian jobs.
Right.
And that's not just true with military people, too. It's people in any area. And also, this is moms too. Like, I've been out of the workforce. I haven't done anything for 10 years. It's like, well, you've probably done a lot in 10 years, but
oh my goodness, moms.
Yeah.
Oh, sheesh.
Right.
They sell themselves short. They get the prize for selling them short because they're so impressive, especially multi-kid moms. Oh my goodness.
Yep. Yeah.
When I hung out with, it was me, one other dude, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 other women. 3 of the 4 were moms. Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was so put in my place. And I'm supposed to be the man, right? One of 2 men anyway. And I remember we're trying to put together this tent and I'm struggling mightily trying to get this stupid thing together. And this mom just comes over here and says, "Get out of the way, snap, snap." And it's done. I'm like, mom power.
Yeah.
And you just don't have time to put up with my crap. What are you whining about over there? Okay, it's done. They just treat you like a kid.
Oh, that's good.
There you go.
Yeah, well, that's certainly one thing that's helped me in my life is having a kid and learning how to say no. I'm much better at work in that regard too now.
Right.
Able to say no.
So let's talk a little bit more about how let's see, you help employers deal with the millennial generation, because that's where we started, but we went off on about a gajillion different tangents.
Okay.
So what in particular are those millennials like looking for from leadership? Is it different than what, I remember talking to this about to another guy, and he was like, they get kind of antsy with like bosses. Mm-hmm. Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah. I think that probably the underlying issue with this big generation clash is a mismatch in expectations.
Okay.
So let's just take the perspective of the managers and the perspective of the millennials coming in. So the perspective of the managers is typically, I need to get a whole bunch of stuff done. I need someone to do it for me. And I need someone who's going to work hard and do a good job and
salute smartly and comply.
Well, maybe comply a little bit, but also perhaps be able to solve problems for me and not take up too much of my time, right?
Right. Work independently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then you've got millennial generation. Now, largely, let's take a little bit of a step back for a sec.
Okay.
A lot of the millennials were raised, we're talking more middle class probably, but a lot of them were raised with parents who have put a lot of resources into their education, into their recreation and all the different areas, into their houses.
Extracurriculars.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And they've also pumped them up with these expectations that, look, you work hard, you get all these good grades, you do all this extracurricular work, and you keep building your resume, and you're going to get this fantastic job.
Right.
You're going to have this career to dream for. And so they've worked. They've been working since, probably they were still in the womb, getting their resumes together, right?
Listen to this song, it'll make you smart.
Yes, exactly. They've been in structured activities and, doing all these things, then internships and...
They're just exhausted.
Yes, they're exhausted. They get out of college or school and they finally get to this light at the end of the tunnel, this promised land. And guess what? They're right at the bottom of the ladder.
Right. Yeah, of course. Right. And well, we all knew that was going to happen, but nobody told them.
Right. They're all being told they're going to, they're very educated. And they are. They're very educated people.
Right. They're very capable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have all these skills, but yet the managers, they're looking for people who can take a job and run with it. That's what they want. And
the helicopter's gone.
Right. And
what did the helicopter do? Like offer too much guidance? Is that the idea?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the helicopters have been protecting, hovering over, and clearing the path ahead.
Right.
Clearing all the barriers out of the way.
Right.
And
Fighting battles and
yes, fighting battles, blaming the bad grade on the teacher instead of the kid who didn't study, and
taking all the blows, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And making sure that the kid has a happy environment, as seeing all the successes, so that their self-esteem is high.
Wow.
And getting
so they're really getting that that reality check right at that first job.
Right. And it's really, it's not fun.
That's brutal.
It is. It's absolutely brutal. And that's what I also try to tell younger people is like, look, you have to get a real sense. And parents, too, we were talking about the happy face and the Facebook and all that. If you're not role modeling and you're not letting your kids see the challenges that you deal with day to day and the ups and downs you have at work, they're not going to get a clear sense of what to expect when they get there either.
Yeah. It's almost like we need a boot camp or something.
Yeah.
Not an actual boot camp. That's not what I'm saying. But
they
need to be they need to be toughened up a little bit, right?
Right. Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For their own benefit. And I think
right.
And you ask me what millennials want, okay? And millennials want the same thing that everybody else wants. They want to lead, happy, successful lives. They want to achieve. They want to, realize their potentials. But they just want it in different ways, and they're accustomed to different things. For example, they're used to people hovering over them and giving them these structured opportunities. And so they're expecting more of that from the managers.
More guidance.
Yes. They're expecting the managers to be there to set things up for them and to be there to give them feedback every step of the way, rather than realizing that, no, perhaps they're actually working for the managers. They need to get the work done and deliver products or, projects, whatever it is they have to deliver. And it's nice when the managers give you feedback. But both sides have to move toward each other to make it work, right? Obviously. But when
it sounds like a new niche for a job.
For a job?
Yeah. A company could hire like a millennial interface.
Yeah. Well, that's what I do, just to help educate.
That's what I'm talking about. Right. Yeah.
No, I mean, this is really...
That's exactly what you're doing. Yes.
Yeah, because people need to be able to understand each other's perspectives.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that either one is right or wrong. It just means that they differ and they need to find a way to come to some middle ground or, give and take.
Yeah, you're still making those cards that help things communicate.
Yes. I know, it's human interactions.
Right. Now you're making human interfaces. Data. That's right. Instead of those big cards.
Yep.
That's amazing. Good.
Yeah.
It's cool because it's like you knew where you were going before you got there a little bit because, you were building interfaces and that's still what you're doing.
Yep. That's been a theme of my career. Absolutely.
That's right. I could talk more about computer geek stuff, but let's say your URL one more time. Let's see. flexibleworksolutions.com, right?
Yep.
And your book is called Flying Without a Helicopter. And I can't see let's see here.
How to prepare
young people for work and life. Yay. I'm like 2 years away from needing glasses, so.
I'm there. Mine are on.
I just need a little bit more light. But this has been a blast. Thank you so much. Did we cover everything? Did we leave anything out?
Oh, hopefully we left a few things out.
Yeah, for next time.
Like keep a little bit of a mystery going here, but we pretty much covered it.
I think we did, and we had a good time doing it. This is a lot of fun. Yeah. So if people want to reach out to you, what's your favorite social media? Is it Twitter?
Well, yeah. My Twitter is, I love Twitter, and it's @Connell Lessons. That's my Twitter handle.
Gotcha. That's CONNE. Wow. Is it
LL
and then Lessons?
Lessons, yeah.
Got it. That was that is 3 L's in a row.
It is, isn't it? Right. Connell lessons.
I got it. But see, it's cool that one L's capped. So that makes it easier. So Connell Lessons, and that's on Twitter. And then again, you're at flexibleworksolutions.com. Thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.